Hi everybody, and welcome back to Be Like Christ. In today's video, we're going to talk about the church against the dark background of culture. It's no surprise to you if I tell you that the United States is rejecting Christian principles and moving further away from them. A nation that was once built on Christianity is now moving into a post-Christian era. And it's not unusual if you're around church folk at all to hear people bemoaning this fact. The fact that a nation that was once godly is no longer godly, and how the church is declining, and that's just such a shame, and the culture is falling apart around us. And on some level, I definitely agree with that sentiment, because it's true. No one wants to see us moving further away from Christ. But at the same time, I think there's another way that we can look at it, not as a disadvantage, but as an advantage and an opportunity for the church to shine brighter. I was reading a book the other day by a guy named Dreher, and it was called The Benedict Option. And I certainly don't agree with everything that Dreher says in his book, but I thought he had some really good points on some topics, and one of those is what I want to share with you today. It's this opportunity for the church to shine brighter against a darker background of culture. He says, in some sense, Christians' new minority status may help us to keep our focus on where it ought to be. Russell Moore says in his book Onward, by losing its cultural respectability, the church is freer to be radically faithful. We will engage the culture less like the chaplain of some idyllic Mayberry and more like the apostles in the book of Acts. We will be speaking not primarily to baptized pagans on someone's church roll, but to those who are hearing something new, maybe for the first time. We will hardly be normal, but we should never have tried to be. The best witness that Christians can offer to post-Christian America is simply to be the church, as fearlessly and creatively a minority as we can manage. The sad truth is, when the world sees us, it often fails to see anything different from non-believers. Christians often talk about reaching the culture without realizing that, having no distinct culture of their own, they have been co-opted by the secular culture they wish to evangelize. Without a substantial Christian culture, it is no wonder our children are forgetting what it means to be Christian, and no surprise that we are not bringing in new converts. So many churches, for so many ways, for so long, have tried to kind of weave themselves into the culture and to move with the culture and shift with the culture so that they're always relevant. The difficulty with that is that the culture is now moving so far away from the principles laid down by Christ that it's becoming impossible. This is where churches now face a choice, and I think an opportunity. There's one decision that they can continue to try to merge with the culture and eventually just get lost in the relativism of modernity. But there's a second option, and the second option is the one that I would encourage, and I think this is where the opportunity is. It's the opportunity for the church to stand its ground and to give up the idea of being normal in a culture that is completely rejecting the church. This author writes, and I think he's correct, is that the best thing that the church can do for the world is to give up its cultural pursuit of an immoral society and just be the church, grounded on the principles that Christ has given us. You see, if the church is standing on those principles, then we're not going to move, right? And the culture is going to get further and further away from those principles, and we're going to look more and more radical as the world shifts. But I think it's time to embrace that, to embrace the fact that we're going to have to take a countercultural, contrasting stand against a constant darkening world. And this is our opportunity to show most clearly the light of Christ to the world. You go out to see the stars on the darkest nights, and the reason for that is because they shine most brightly against the contrast of just blackness. And Christians, as light to the world, if they stay firm on those principles laid down by Christ and the apostles, are going to have a greater and greater contrast as the world gets darker and darker. This will give us the opportunity to fix our identity in Christ. And when it's fixed in Christ, as the world moves farther away from that light, the light of Christ will no longer be indistinguishable within this cultural weave, but will stand out and shine very brightly against the backdrop of modern culture.